This is everything that I would change about Airbnb in 2024. Welcome back, friends. And don't get me wrong, Airbnb is great. They've come a long way, but they've got a lot of work left to do. And I think they've made a couple changes that maybe they should unmake. What do you guys think? Context. I've been a host for over 8 years, over 25,000 reservations in my book. And I've talked to thousands of hosts as a, YouTuber. It's natural. People talk to me about their problems, what they like and what they don't like. And ever since Airbnb went public a couple years ago, they've had to make some decisions for shareholders. And those decisions could be good or bad for guests and hosts. The very first thing that I would do is I would ask Airbnb to allow transfer of ownership of a listing. I think that this would be a great addition to the changes that they've already made for co-hosting, which is to allow a co-host to file for resolutions. That was an awesome change. But now let's take it a step further. See, an owner could have an investment property with a co-host that they like. The co-host is materially responsible for the reviews, but the owner then sells that listing to another investor, and they're using the same co-host, and they want to keep all of the good reviews that the co-host is responsible for. The only way to solve this proactively is to make the co-host the admin, and they run the account the entire time. So for now, if you're an investor and you think you want to sell the Airbnb later and you want to have a value to the account, the co-host will need to make a unique Airbnb account just for you that the co-host runs. And then when you sell your Airbnb listing, they can also sell that Airbnb account. It'd be a little bit messy. So just transfer ownership would be way easier. What do you guys think? Another thing that I would change, and this sounds salty, I know, but I'd have Airbnb follow through on their resolutions better. I think that they need to change their internal structure, their support for hosts, their case managers to be much more hands-on about supporting hosts and getting them paid for damages faster. They would find that there's a lot of fraud going on. They would find that there are hosts that are charging asinine amounts of money for things because Airbnb doesn't have control of it. They're experiencing so much loss because they're so hands-off. So there's an advantage for them to find bad cheating hosts who are gaming the system. So if only for that reason, they could give us all a little bit more support. And when a guest damages a table or puts a hole in the wall and we need money to fix things because there are small hosts that are still living paycheck to paycheck, they could use that support to get things fixed. Getting things fixed today isn't cheap, and some hosts just don't have the cash. So I would like to request that they amp up their resolution department and their customer support and take the host's side more often when it comes to making the listing better, because let's think of it this way. Even if you want to dispute whether or not a guest is at fault for a certain amount of damage, the fact that the listing needs to be repaired to save the next guest from harm is something that I think Airbnb should care more about, because the long-term effects of leaving an Airbnb in mediocre condition is a mediocre brand. Right, Airbnb. The third thing that I would change, and yes, I'm very much a host advocate here, is I want Airbnb to allow hosts to have their own measures of screening. It's great that Airbnb has their own base level of screening, but I think hosts should be able to have docked into Airbnb an amplified level of screening to make sure that people get the guests that they like, including making a change which is high risk for them because it could be discriminatory. No reservations from anybody whose account is generated from within 10 or 15 or 25 miles of that listing. And you might find that this is not about discrimination, but just about general risk, because people who are more close to an Airbnb have a different purpose for booking a lot of times. And it's not just parties. You think about somebody who's local to a city who books an Airbnb and then is also always around and knows exactly where that Airbnb is, and they could just drive down the street and knock out a window and rob the place one day. I think that there are many arguments that a host would say, I prefer my travelers to be at least 100 miles away, just for the sake of risk. It has nothing to do with what age, gender, race, creed a person is. Because again, it could be just about somebody being able to drive down the street and rob the place later. Fourth change that I think would be cool for hosts. I don't know if I'd actually benefit from this, but if they made a separate business, kind of like a side shoot, where they created a certification training for housekeepers, where people could say, I want to be a short-term rental housekeeper. And they take a little program that Airbnb puts together and puts a stamp of approval on them, and then puts them into a marketplace, kind of like their co-host marketplace, but instead a housekeeper marketplace of their own, where there are contractors that you could hire. Airbnb could solve one of their biggest problems like that. And they could generate extra revenue for people who pay for said certifications. That way you can have housekeepers at an affordable market rate instead of going to these third-party apps and stuff like that where everybody is maybe even more so price gouging. Airbnb can help level that playing field and finally fight hotels on the one thing that they always lose on, cost of cleaning and quality. What do you guys think about that one? Change number 5 that I think everybody would love would be a little bit more education. And it doesn't have to be, here's how to host, but imagine if they had a partnership with someone. Like, let's say they did something with Wayfair, nice and fancy, right? Affiliate marketing, but that relationship was like where they created a course system where interior designers would show you different rooms and how to make the best of each room, right? How to make listings pop. Because that's another part that Airbnb has a hard time with against hotels. Hotels have budgets and they've got professionals and they make places look good for less. Airbnb hosts, they're running without any experience, right? And that's one of the cool things about this industry is you can get started with no experience. But if you looked at my listings back in 2015, you could definitely tell that a guy dropped out of college and put what would basically have been his dorm room on Airbnb. Those were my first listings. And so if we can upgrade the overall quality standard by giving hosts even just free inspiration, then I think Airbnb would do better and guests would love the places more. Number 6, hot take, and I'm sorry, guests. If you guys are guests, you're going to hate me. You hate me for all this stuff already. I'm sorry. They need to undo the 72-hour window for claims with Airbnb guests. I think that's a little long. They might think 24 hours is a little short, but Airbnb already has this thing where they say they can override the 24-hour window or the 72-hour window if they think that it's deserving. But Airbnb guests are finding too many opportunities to game the system and get free stays. I think Airbnb stacking on top of this could do more. Let's call this one number 7. Airbnb could have better reputation levers where hosts like us know that this person has had claims against other hosts, even though it may not have been put into a review because a host did a review first or doesn't do reviews much at all and then finds out that the guest later tried to game them. I think Airbnb hosts should know if a guest is a serial resolutions person. I think Airbnb could build better back-end resources for hosts to protect themselves against guests who commit fraud to get free stays. Airbnb could have a warning. Guests like to try to do these things to get free stays. If they show photos of hair this way or what looks like to be a bug over here, they're going to submit these types of things for free stays. So make sure your photo documentation for every reservation shows proof that these things don't exist, because they are the most common things that guests get free stays over. That's just something hosts would see. It's not something that guests would see, so it wouldn't affect the guest experience, would it? It's just something that hosts have in their dashboard like, warning, don't trust all guests. Be careful. You could give away 2 nights of reservation if you don't take these photos. Every host has already decided to be a host at this point. They're not going to quit because they find out that some guests are like fraudsters. They'll quit if they come across enough fraudsters and Airbnb doesn't support the host and the host loses a bunch of money. They'll quit for that, but they won't quit because Airbnb warns them that some guests are fraudsters. Change number 8, I believe we're on, is I think Airbnb should give guests a little bit more range in how they do their reviews. And I'm not the best at guest sentiment, but here's an example. Let me know if you've got a better idea, but here's one. Airbnb could say, you paid $170 per night for this reservation. How do you feel about that price? And then if they say something like low, like out of scale of 1 to 10 or 1 to 5, if they choose something in the bottom half, you'd say, what do you think this place is worth per night? Something like that. And Airbnb has this value thing that they go, do you think that you got a good value? But I don't think they give like real big range. And I think that private feedback could let a host know if a guest feels like the place was too expensive for, say, certain reasons. And a guest could actually give reasons why they think the place wasn't worth $250. And what we could find would be really complex. It's not just some simple thing. Some guests will be mad because it's peak season. They're like, it's not fair that everything's so expensive. And they'll be like, I wanted to pay $300, but this was $600 and there's nothing else available. Yeah, tough luck. But they'll say, yeah, I paid $300 for the place and the place just, the coffee wasn't good, toilet paper was too cheap, and the shampoo had this really yucky feel. And for some place that was $300 a night, those would be the things that I would have expected better quality. Now, what we see is a pattern of what guests start to attribute quality to. You see where I'm going with that? So the feedback we get is, what are the things that guests care about for the prices that they pay? Is it the bed quality? Is it the pillows? Is it the shampoo? Is it the coffee you chose? And that feedback lets you know if you want to charge more money, protect these things, because guests will give you 5-star reviews at that price more likely because these are the things that they care about. Something like that. What do you think? Number 9 on things I think they should change. And this is being proactive. They could have an API connection with Booking.com and VRBO themselves. They could allow for a connection to a direct booking website themselves, where you don't have to use a channel manager. You could have your own direct booking website and connect it to Airbnb. And then Airbnb would connect to VRBO, and they could then host all of that in their multi-calendar, right? Wouldn't that be kind of cool? So Airbnb is just a few API calls, a few communications away from just digesting, let's use the word digesting or ingesting. You software guys help here, please. Maybe ingesting and populating all of your reservations for every channel right on the Airbnb platform. And you know what? Airbnb could charge you for that, just less than other softwares. Imagine if Airbnb let you for $3 per month per listing to connect your listings to other channels and host it. Because all these other softwares charge 20, 30, 50 bucks per listing. Airbnb could undercut all of those softwares. They would make a ton more revenue, and there wouldn't be all these bugs from third-party software. They could just run it. How cool would that be? And number 10, I'm going to say it, they need to bring cameras back. They need to let hosts who rent private rooms have cameras in other spaces so they can enforce behavior. Nobody should be walking naked to the kitchen if they're one room out of 4 other rooms. If they've got roommates, they shouldn't be walking around like that anyway. So to make sure that someone does their dishes like the house rules say, a camera in the kitchen is a great idea. To make sure they don't steal other people's food, a camera in the kitchen is a great idea. They need to be not so exacting about their camera policy because they started with shared spaces. They started with shared rooms and private rooms and mattresses on the living room floor and all this odd stuff. And this camera policy is going to destroy some of their very best, longest standing private room hosts. And that one might be a bit controversial. So I'll let you sound off in the comments about that one if you disagree or if you agree. I know you guys are out there. Please let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way through to the end. If you wonder maybe what else Airbnb has changed that you might have an opinion on or you just need to know, watch this video. It's chock full of all of the recent updates that Airbnb did to their software, their algorithm, to the business that you need to know about to be a good Airbnb host. Thank you for watching this all the way to the end. You're my favorite people, and as always, I will see you on the other side.